Today we're going to talk about the latest updates on Taekook and also some confusion that has arisen lately. First of all, we have new posts from TAEHYUNG. He recently uploaded several photos where he appears with J-Hope and Jimin. In these images, he looks relaxed, smiling, and with that calm energy that characterizes him. Many comment on how good he looks, not only for his appearance but also for the way he transmits a more mature and free vibe. Something that is very striking is how he has adopted certain behaviors that we have also seen in Jungkook. They say that when you spend a lot of time with someone, you end up absorbing some of their customs, and in Taehyung's case, that is quite noticeable. It's not just about small details like gestures or expressions, but also deeper attitudes, like the way he enjoys simple moments or connects with the people he loves. For some time now, we've seen how both Taehyung and Jungkook have begun to show more freedom around their friends. They've learned to open up more and share everyday things, something they may have previously held dear. In part, this has to do with how their relationship has evolved. Although they've never said it directly, it's clear that what they have goes beyond a common friendship. Moving on to another important topic, let's talk about Taehyung's most recent live. As many already know, he did a much-discussed live stream. Although he didn't show his face, he spent quite some time talking to fans. Several people asked him to turn on his camera so they could see him, but he said he couldn't at that moment. What's interesting is what happened at the beginning of the live. Those who were there from the beginning noticed some background noises. They weren't loud. Many people commented that someone else's voice could be heard among those sounds, and several agreed that it seemed to be Jungkook's voice. I listened to the recording several times myself, and there are moments where someone else can clearly be heard, but the tone, rhythm, and type of voice suggest Jungkook. Obviously, we can't say for sure it was him because we didn't see him, but it wouldn't be out of the ordinary either. In fact, considering the dynamic between them lately, it makes sense to think Jungkook was there, accompanying Taehyung, like so many other times. Over the past year, their relationship has become more visible. Despite many insisting they're not together or no longer in contact, the truth is that the signs say otherwise. It's also important to keep in mind that even if they don't say anything publicly, their way of looking out for each other is still very clear. They protect each other, support each other, and each finds ways to be there for the other even when they're not in the same place. It's a dynamic that needs no explanation because those who have followed them for a long time already understand. Now let's talk about what's going on with J-Hope, Taehyung, and Jungkook, because there are a lot of people who are still upset with them, and that's generating a lot of hate, especially towards Taehyung, J-Hope, and also Jungkook. We have to remember that BTS has always been a group of 7, and each of them deserves the same support. It's not fair to attack just one because they didn't do something that some expected. Recently, J-Hope uploaded a video to his Instagram stories where some of the group members appear, but Jungkook was missing. Maybe he was busy with another project, maybe he just couldn't be there. But instead of understanding that, a lot of people started to get angry. They complained that J-Hope didn't mention Taehyung in the live or that he didn't put a picture of him in his posts, and now they're also asking why he didn't film Jungkook. It's very easy to fall into those kinds of assumptions, but we have to remember that we don't really know what's going on in their lives. We don't know their decisions, nor the reasons why they appear or don't appear together. Sometimes it's the company itself that decides what is published, what is shown, or who participates. We can't be jumping to conclusions so quickly and saying things like they're being sidelined or that they want to remove them from the group. In fact, I saw a page that said something like that they were supposedly ignoring Taehyung and Jungkook, and honestly, it's an absurd idea. They've known each other for many years, they grew up together, trained together, and formed a connection that can't be broken by a post or a story on social media. They're part of a group that has been through a lot and has proven more than once that their bond goes beyond what's seen on camera. In the case of Taehyung and Jungkook, their relationship has always been special. And although not everything is shown publicly, those who have followed them for a long time know it. Now, speaking of which, there's another topic that many are talking about. It's said that the restaurant they went to is called Nobu, in Malibu, Los Angeles. The interesting thing isn't just that they went, but that it's the same pattern we saw before. Taehyung and Jungkook went together, alone as a couple, to that restaurant for the first time. The same thing that happened before with Baekjeong restaurant, they went first, and then they brought Jimin. Now at Nobu, after going alone, they also returned, but with the other members. And this is something that has been repeated several times. Taekook tends to do this. First, they experience something alone, share it as a couple, and then recreate it with the others. As if it were a way of showing us, without saying it directly, that that moment was theirs first, that it has a personal value for them. And in reality, these aren't coincidences. It's part of how Taehyung and Jungkook build their space amidst everything that comes with being public figures. They know they can't share everything openly, but they still find a way to leave clues. Taekook has had to navigate his relationship in a very complicated context. They are part of an industry that rarely allows for these kinds of connections. And yet, they've remained close, caring for each other, respecting each other, and always supporting each other. That's why it's important not to be swayed by rumors or what isn't said. Not everything needs to be explained. Sometimes the small gestures, the seemingly ordinary moments, are the ones that say the most. We can't forget that the 7 members of BTS have shared more than a decade of their lives together, and that creates bonds that aren't easily severed. But in the case of Taehyung and Jungkook, there's something more. They've grown together not only as artists, but as people. They've chosen each other in the good times and the difficult ones. And even though the world tries to impose limits on them, they still find a way to be by each other's side. So, instead of looking for evidence to divide them, or getting angry over meaningless details, maybe it's best to look a little deeper. There's something that doesn't need explaining when you see Taehyung and Jungkook together. It's not something they shout to the world or something they try to hide. It shows in the way they look at each other, in the way they approach each other without thinking, in the way their bodies understand each other without words. It's a connection that isn't manufactured or rehearsed, it's a way of being that seems to have been born between them a long time ago and that remains intact even with the passing of the years. When they share the same space, everything changes. It's not just that they're physically close, it's that their movements, their glances, and even the silences they share speak for themselves. They don't go out of their way to prove anything, there's no exaggeration. This way of behaving, which for others might be just friendship or habit, carries much more weight when you understand the context in which they live. Taehyung and Jungkook are part of an industry where personal relationships, especially those that deviate from what is considered normal, are not always easy to showcase. There are rules, there are glances, there are expectations. But even so, they have chosen to stay close, with honesty, with respect, without hiding what they feel, even if they don't say it with words. It's not uncommon to see how one reaches out for the other without thinking. When they're together, everything seems simpler, more natural. They understand each other with a glance, they touch without fear, they laugh without forcing anything. This constant closeness is neither coincidence nor a strategy. It's the result of a relationship built over time, with care, with true affection. There are many videos, photos, and broadcasts in which this bond can be clearly observed. Sometimes it's something small, like a hand resting on the other's shoulder. Other times it's more obvious, like a caress of the hair, a gesture of care, a hug that lasts longer than necessary. In each of these scenes, there's a pattern that repeats itself. It's the way they react to each other without having to think about it. As if one's body already knows what the other is going to do. As if they read each other from within. And that's especially noticeable when there's no script, when there are no cameras directing what they should do. That's when they're most authentic. For example, when they're on a live show, and Taehyung leans close to Jungkook, or when Jungkook seeks Taehyung's gaze and smiles as if everything else stops mattering. Those moments aren't staged. They're natural, spontaneous, real. And that's what makes so many people notice them. Not because they're trying to prove something, but because they're simply that way when they're together. Many might think it's just a close relationship between friends, but when you pay attention to the details, the story tells itself. It's not just physical closeness, it's an intimacy that goes beyond that. There's respect, there's trust, and there's a sense of belonging between them. As if each knows the other is there, always, under any circumstances. And that's something you don't build with just anyone. There are people who come into your life and stay, and others who become a part of you. Jungkook and Taehyung seem to be that to each other. The interesting thing is that they've never felt the need to explain everything. They haven't given speeches, nor have they confirmed anything with words. And maybe they don't need to. There are relationships that don't ask for approval or permission. They just exist. And this is one of them. That's why, instead of focusing on rumors or what some people want to interpret, just look at what they do when they're together. Because it's those little things, the gestures, the silences, the synchronized movements, that end up telling the whole story.